Hey guys, welcome back. It's Zach, I'm Skyline Shore, and today we're going to do a first impression review, a first look here at Hex Shards of Fate, a new free-to-play collecting card game that's digital. One really awesome thing that I like about digital card games is that they kind of bring to life a lot of boringness to, I guess, the playing cards. And nothing wrong with the playing cards, it's just, you know, it's kind of hard to actually get a lot of those cards. Sometimes you can't really truly appreciate the cards because you can't hear sound effects. You don't see the cool extra special effects like you can in digital card games. And I guess it's true in digital card games, you can't feel the cards, and maybe the art isn't as well produced. I don't know, I think that's questionable. Some people like to feel the art in their hands and they think it makes it better, but to me, I think digital card games are overall just completely better in every single way, other than you can't feel the card yourself and you can't like hold it and actually collect a physical thing and have it on your wall or whatever. But to me, that doesn't matter. To me, I want to play a game and I want to feel the game to the most extent, you know, the biggest extent. Sure, I'm not going to have that new card smell, oh sure, okay, but for the most part, competitively, and also aesthetically, I'm gonna get more out of my game. Okay, so for one thing, I'm starting this off like kind of not talking about gameplay at all. I'm talking about the story. I'm talking about the lore of these cards, these characters. Whenever I did my first impression, I didn't really connect to this game. I didn't. I just kind of ran into it, looked at the mechanics. I was like, oh, it's just like Magic the Gathering, and I didn't really give it a chance. Now that I'm here on MMO Attack, I want to talk about this game and want to really point out the points that I think make it strong. And first, we're going to talk about the story, which is pretty good. The game apparently does have a novel. I'm looking on the website right now. It says that it has a novel, and I can say that the history of these cards, the lore, seems pretty good, and that's one really big strong point of Magic. Not only just its mechanics, yeah, Magic is really complicated, some people would say convoluted, but I have to say we're not talking about the mechanics first, we're going to be talking about the story, which is, as well, just like Magic, also kind of like big and deep and awesome and cool and fantasy-like, but it's a little bit more on, I guess you can kind of say, like a comical side. Now Magic did have like that whole dark humor kind of thing. This game has that too, but it's like more like the art style and everything kind of lends itself more toward almost like a World of Warcraft kind of look. Like it's more cartoon, you know, it's more comical, more cartoon. Now, while some cards really do look very, very serious, and I'm not saying that there's a lack of detail in these cards, I think that just overall it's not as serious and probably not too, I guess, the definition of the word epic. It's not quite as epic as Magic the Gathering, but it still kind of has its own unique charm, and I definitely caught it during this second impression here. Well, this is a first impression for this channel, but I have played the game before and did a first impression on Free MMO Station, but now that I've been really playing the game and really checking it out, I can say that I really like the story. Now, I play as the Shinhair. This is the deck that I play, and yes, for these different decks, you do have like these different characters, so kind of similar to Hearthstone, which I really like. Basically, real quick, I can just say that this game kind of is like mixing a lot of Hearthstone and a lot of Magic the Gathering, and really it's just hitting the sweet spot, especially for a digital card game, because Magic the Gathering doesn't really have a great digital card game. They kind of just released the new one, but I don't know, this one feels really good. I like Hex Shards of Fate, but anyways, let's talk about the Shinhair. I want to go back and talk about the story of the Shinhair. So apparently, the Shinhair were being driven out by the elves and the humans. I guess they thought them pests, right? Well, that was actually a really horrible idea, apparently, because the Shinhair actually aligned with like the Necro people underground, and they kind of like had this alliance, and yeah, they are now a very big force to be reckoned with and might even take over the world. So it's pretty cool, and it's kind of fun because you can see this in the deck as well. You have some very interesting cards. Yes, you do have your Shinhair cards, your rabbit folk little cards, and it's mechanically and lore-wise, it fits together because you have these rabbits and everything, and one combo that you can do is actually you can summon tons of units and then buff those units up with other units. So like you have a unit that gives +1/+1 for every unit that you have in control, or you have another unit that gives +1/+1 to every other unit that is on the board. So you can have like this big army of really big numbers, or you can kind of intertwine some of your black cards or your swamp cards. Well, it's not swamp in this game. Well, you have your purple cards, okay, guys? You have crystals. There are crystals in this game. It's not like lands like in Magic the Gathering, but whatever. Semantics, aesthetics, whatever. You can take these purple cards, and there's actually one purple card that will devour the hairs. Like, you could devour the hairs, and you can turn him into a huge monster. So, you have a lot of flexibility, and it also kind of meshes in with the lore. Like, you can use these Necro cards intertwined with your hair cards, or you can use your hair cards and just kind of focus on those guys. But so far, even though I just have the base deck, normally, notoriously, in other games, you don't really get to set up a lot of combos in base decks. They're very simple, they're overly filled with neutral monsters, but in this game, game, it felt really good. Now, I don't know about other decks, but this, like, I can imagine that each and every character is going to have some very unique playstyles entirely. Now, I'm not saying that it's not the same for Hearthstone and everything. It's just, you know, your base decks and everything are kind of simple, and the gameplay isn't too differentiated at the very beginning. But right away, heck, Shards of Fate, for my first impression, I can tell that mechanically, each deck plays differently, and I really do like that. And one thing that I do appreciate about the game is that not only is it easy to get into the lore-wise, it kind of like, you know, because the cards have the lore on the card and everything. You can even go onto the website and read the novel and stuff like that. That's pretty freaking cool. But you also have, you're going to have a campaign. The campaign's not in the game yet, but you are going to have an actual campaign. You do have sort of like this arena gauntlet single-player thing that you can do, and they also have a training mode. But overall, it seems like they're focusing pretty heavily on single-player, which I think is really good because we see that in Hearthstone right now, where the single-player is like really big. And even now in Magic the Gathering, we also have a kind of interesting story mode-ish. I don't think it's going to be as good as Hex Shards of Fate. I think Hex is probably going to go really full on with this. So far, what I'm seeing from the story, I like it, so I want to see some more of that. Now, for, I guess you could say, Hearthstone. Yeah, Hearthstone does have a story mode. It's really more like challenge modes, which, you know, Hex is probably going to be similar. I don't know how it's going to compete. Yeah, and you know, there's definitely going to be a lot of dialogue in the comments below about, is Hex better than Hearthstone? Is Hearthstone the best still? Honestly, I can say that Hearthstone it's just huge. It's absolutely huge. But it's also a kind of weird playstyle. It definitely plays to the strengths of a digital card game, and you can play it on your tablet and everything. So overall, I'm going to have to give it, you know, 5 stars. Hearthstone is a 5-star game, a 5-star AAA free-to-play game by freaking Blizzard, so it's going to have huge tournaments all the time. Hex Shards of Fate, though, it's pretty interesting because Magic the Gathering is huge, right? So where's Hex coming from? Apparently this is coming from some veterans, right? Some veterans of collecting card games have come together and they wanted to make a digital card game, a proper digital card game of a game similar to Magic the Gathering. Now, Magic the Gathering notoriously has had some somewhat off digital games. Like, some people like them, some people don't. Overall, it's not like gleaming success like Hearthstone. So Hex, I think, really is kind of filling a niche. I think it's definitely doing it properly. There are some other digital card games out there that I could honestly say are a little bit more unique mechanically, but overall, Hex is just showing that it's incredibly polished, and it's got a lot of depth, and it's got a lot to offer. Holy crap, does it have a lot to offer. And now, okay, now that I said that the game is polished, has good story, all that good stuff, now let's talk about some of these mechanics so I can just elucidate here. So like I said previously, it is very, very similar to Magic the Gathering. You do have your sort of mana cards. They're not land cards. They're like crystals. They're powers. They are different colored, and very, very similar to Magic the Gathering. You do have a summoning system, which is, well, almost identical. It's almost identical. It's basically the same. Essentially, you have a number in the top left, and you need that many mana. And then you have these different colored symbols below that. You need that many of that color, and that's pretty much it. That's the only limitations. Maybe there are some cards that you can only summon it if you have another unit on the battlefield, or you have to devour a unit. Maybe there's stuff like that. I'm unsure. I didn't really get to see much of that, because, you know, first impressions after all. But for the most part, summoning is pretty straightforward. And there's also different phases, just like Magic the Gathering. You can cast spells during different phases, and so in a sense, it's definitely slower paced than Hearthstone, you know, because Hearthstone just like boom, 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 combos everywhere, flippity flop, and you're done. Hex is a little bit more complicated, which, you know, that's a big criticism of, you know, Hearthstone. Hearthstone kind of does seem like it's a little bit more simple. It's a little bit more chaotic, where Magic the Gathering and Hex Shards of Fate is definitely way more complicated, has a little bit deeper gameplay mechanics, and I think I really do appreciate it. I absolutely do appreciate it, especially here in Hex Shards of Fate, and with the different, very unique combos and abilities of your characters, of your little generals, because they do have their own special abilities. Every turn, you kind of get a counter, and you can summon it, or, well, my character had to summon. I can summon a, like a 0-1 unit. That's pretty much all I could do every 3 turns, so I could do that. I don't know about the other characters. I didn't research them or see them. I only played against the NPCs, but it seems like that, you know, it's pretty cool. That's something Magic was kind of missing, and I think it's definitely fun, especially because you have these very unique decks which have these limitations, you know, of having certain cards in their decks, and it just has this like aura of originality. Like, even though a lot of the mechanics are just like Magic the Gathering, giving a general or class system to the decks, you know, a deck limiter, changes everything. Honestly, for the better. It's easier to learn, easier to watch competitively. and it really adds to a lot of unique strategies that normally would not exist, probably. So real quick, touching on the combat mechanics, basically, you summon a card, it can't do anything for that one turn, but it can block on your opponent's turn. So whenever your opponent attacks, he just kind of chooses to attack, you know, just a frontal attack. You are the one who chooses if you block and what creature you block with what creature yourself. So yeah, you control the blocking, which means you control the pace. In Hearthstone, board control is incredibly important, but in Hex Shards of Fate, you are always the determiner of your board control. You can choose to take a million billion hits to the face, which is actually kind of what the Shin Hair deck, at least the base deck, is all about. It's all about building up your minions. It's about building up your board and then utilizing that however you want to with your own unique combos. You need to do it fast though. That's the only thing. You need to choose when to take stuff to the face, when not to, but for the most part, you need to be very patient and then come out with some huge giant combo, which I really appreciate for that style of deck. I very much enjoy that, so I'm glad I was lucky enough to just randomly pick the Shin Hair. So, woo! Good for you, Hex Shards of Fate. Though this can arise some certain awkward situations where you and the robots, the AI, or another player are just basically passing turns because you don't want to attack, you don't want to really defend, I don't know, you don't really want to give up your board control because maybe next turn you could draw a card and do some huge combo. Overall, sometimes there are some situations where it's like a waiting game, where in Hearthstone normally it's like boom, 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 action. Games can be over instantaneously, essentially. You can do some crazy combos every turn. Hex is a little bit more patient-based, especially because you do have different phases. So you have to start the phase, end the phase, choose to attack or not to attack, who to defend, end the phase. And then you even have to like resolve different phases. Whenever your opponent lays down a card, you have to be like, yeah, okay, you laid down that card, I resolve it, cool, good to go. We are both aware that you laid down that card. So the pace already, mechanically, you know, just because of the game, is slowed down, but also because of the phases, you know, and all that. One thing that I don't like, okay, I want to compare this to Hearthstone again, is that Hearthstone, you can just throw out cards, like you can click a card and then drag it up just slightly, as long as it's like, you know, you throw the card on the board and then it just throws on the board. You can use spells and basically it just feels really good. You don't have to really aim or anything. In this game, it's kind of weird. You have to click a card and then drag it to the middle of the screen. And then from the middle of the screen, you have to choose where you want to place it down. If it's a monster card, it'll probably just lay on the ground somewhere. But if it's a spell card, you have to throw it into the middle of the screen, or in Hearthstone, you click it on your hand, and then you click. So, I don't know, it's something where, like, it would take 1 second in Hearthstone, and now it takes 3 seconds in Hex of Shards of Fate. So there's a lot of little, tiny, polished things that could happen that I think would make Hex Shards of Fate feel a little bit faster and a little bit more intuitive, because sometimes it's not quite clear, like, oh, why couldn't I place that card? I don't understand. And, like, okay, say I summon a monster. I have to actually wait, like, half a second for the game to kind of, like, recuperate or something like that. I don't know what's going on. But I just can't like throw cards down. In Hearthstone, I could take 3 monsters, I just boom, 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 throw them down, like super easy. I'm not even a full second, and like my board is full. In this game, I have to place the card, wait, place a card, wait, place a card, and maybe that's just because of the animations. Maybe you could turn that off. But I think overall, Hex Shards of Fate needs a little bit of polish in that direction if it wants to truly be competitive in a sense like Hearthstone is. Now, I'm not saying Hex Shards of Fate isn't polished, because there's a ton of really awesome animation work. I just want to see a little bit more because, well, honestly, I just think that this game deserves that love because I'm starting to really like it. True, honestly guys, I'll admit it. In my free MMO Station video, I just did my raw first impressions. It was literally my first 15 minutes. I sat down and I was like, it's kind of doom and gloomy. I'm feeling kind of cold. I'm not really like digging it. There's not too much life and atmosphere here. And I think that's going to change though whenever they kind of polish up the UI, they add in the campaign and stuff like that. So a little bit more voice acting, a little bit more effects and stuff like that, you know. But I want to see the game get there. I think it can get there. Hearthstone was instantaneously there because it's World of Warcraft. They had the whole tavern scene, and you know that game is just really welcoming, really warm, and I like that. The design choices, the aesthetic choices in that game were phenomenal. Hex is kind of going the magic route. It's a little bit darker toned, but at the same time, Hex, you kind of have this comicalness, and I think you should really promote that, and you totally do. I think in your gauntlet and probably in your campaign, I just want to see a little bit more intuitiveness. I want to see a little bit more polish. Make the game play a little bit faster for people who don't have really high attention spans like me. I'm glad that I got the opportunity actually to do another first impression because I would have honestly have never ever played Hex again because my first 15 minutes were mediocre. My next, getting into the game and actually playing it, fantastic, and I'm very much enjoying it. Whew, I know, man, that's a lot. But I do these long-winded videos whenever I actually truly care about a game. So, even though I'm kind of, I guess, shitting on it in a way, I don't know if you guys are seeing it like that, but I'm not. I really do like Hex. One thing, though, that I don't like about Hex, and I think would be really good, I don't know what you got going on, Hex Shards of Fate, but I think you should probably launch on Steam. I think that would be a great strategic plan. I would really like it. Maybe if we can get the community to greenlight it, that would be freaking sweet. But I fucking hate it, excuse my language, but I do not like the GameForge Live or GameForge Live, whatever, system that you got going on. You have to actually download GameForge Live, which is sort of like the service where you can play other games like Ion, like Hex, Shards of Fate, stuff like that. But I like Steam, and everyone loves Steam. When a game goes on Steam, it gets huge, and you know, I freaking hate GameForge. So please, if you could get on Steam, that would be tremendously freaking awesome. Okay, with that out of the way, I want to just kind of address some other things that I quite couldn't get into because it's really more for like the end game user, for the end user, but there is an auction house, and this is kind of interesting because this takes it from a digital collecting card game to a digital trading card game, and I think a lot of people really enjoy that sort of like thing, you know, like trading cards. You can actually trade boosters. I don't even know what else you can trade in this game. So there is an auction house, and it's pretty interesting because there are some games that are card games, and you can collect cards, but you can't trade cards. And it's just very awesome that they are allowing you to do that in Hex Shards of Fate. But on a note about the store and cash shop, we got to talk about the pay to win. Okay, so there is a single player, and you will be able to equip items for your general, because you do have a general, right? He does have your own special ability and everything, but you can actually equip items on your character to kind of help you through your single player experience. And I guess you can maybe see this as pay to win because you are actually rawly improving yourself. But then again, you have to think it's not fair. Like, the single player itself is not fair. You're not going against fair decks. It's like Hearthstone. Like, you are going against cards that you can't get. Well, I don't know if cards per se, but in Hearthstone, that's how it is. You are going against generals and characters that you can't get, and they have very weird and very strong special abilities. So very much like an RPG, you need to equip these items in order to truly progress. I'm sure maybe some extremely hardcore and very lucky RNG-based player might be able to beat this without these artifacts and these armor pieces, but really the armor pieces and artifacts are supposed to be there to kind of like, it's just supposed to be like an RPG thing. It's supposed to be like a fun, archaic thing that you just kind of do. It shouldn't really mean much. It doesn't really mean pay to win, okay? You can go and trade, get these artifacts and weapons. You might be able to purchase them for money, but I don't know. To what extent you call that pay to win or not, I don't know. It's really just supposed to be there to add depth because you are fighting unfair opponents. But I think it is debatable. I think it's something that maybe we could talk about in the comments below if it's pay to win or not. But don't worry, guys, that is not in the competitive game mode. But hey, let's go ahead and segue into competitive. This is what I freaking like about Hex Shards of Fate, which actually better than any other digital trading game, most actual just like online games, it's better than most online games, is that you have a server browser. I believe you can play with other people and bots and stuff like that, but you have a fucking tournament browser, guys. You can actually see upcoming tournaments, and you can join into it. I don't know if there's like money things or whatever, if you could spectate stuff too. I don't know, I didn't actually get to touch that, but just the fact that there is actually a tournament browser, honestly, that just kind of blows my mind. Even if this was a shit game, just the fact that they had a tournament browser in the actual client, that's huge. I mean, we see games like League of Legends, right? Which, it was pretty rough whenever it started, but because it actually had a ranking system, remember Halo 2's and 3's ranking system, how dedicated people were to that? Yeah, ranking systems are awesome. But now put in actual tournament browsing, a tournament system inside the client, and I think the community will just explode. The casual community will be able to be introduced into the competitive community, and that's going to allow people to watch it on Twitch, watch it on stream, just get more into the game, more dedicated, and it also gives a reason for hardcore players to actually play Hex consistently. But overall, I can't really comment too much about too much because it is still in beta, so if there is too many criticisms that I have, you know, I can't just shit on a game because it's in beta, right? I can't do that. We already saw some backlash with some previous videos whenever I did that, so I'm trying to be a little bit more fair. Hex Shards of Fate, I gave you a fair shake this time. I came back, and I'm really glad I did. So, thanks for that. And I guess this is a lesson to anybody else. If you're going to play a game like a collecting card game, a strategy game, you know, games that take a really long time to get into, they're not really indicative of first impressions. They really aren't. But you need to just kind of try to go the extra effort. I know it takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of soul from you, it takes a lot of effort, but sometimes the effort is worth it, and Hex seems to be like one of those games that's worth it. So thanks for watching, guys. I'm Skylant Shore with MMOATK.com, Attack Gaming official YouTube. We have fun here, and I hope you do too. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe so you stay notified of all these cool upcoming multiplayer games. Yeah, we gotta focus on indie games and stuff like that. So, hey, I mean, if you're into that atmosphere, if you're into that scene like we are, then stick with us, and we'll be excited to see you again. Welcome back, Attack. Today, we're going to be talking about the top 10 free-to-play MMOs for this year, for 2015, and I think across all the genres for free-to-plays, we've seen so much innovation in MOBAs, in MMOs, in, like, card games. We've seen so many new things this past year, and hopefully, maybe, probably so, 2015 is going to be just as exciting. This is our